So thank you very much, the organizers, for thinking of this event and this topic, because generally these kinds of topics are not there in a gathering even like this. So let us start. The topic here is Indian knowledge systems and temple architecture. I would extend the title and the topic to from architecture also to temple ecosystem. Of course, we will discuss architecture and its relation with knowledge, but it is also the ecosystem which is extremely important here. I'd like to start from one reference in the West of knowledge systems. There is a project in the West called Consilience Project. It is run by Daniel Schmachtenberger and works on the basis of foundation of Edward Wilson's desire that all of the different disciplines of sciences should come together, because knowledge is fragmented as they see it. One example of that fragmentation is that right now we know in our history, in the entire history of humankind, we have never known as much about ecology and ecosystems as we do now. And yet, there never has been a time in which we have been more destructive of our ecology and ecosystems as we have been now. So they see a gap that there are different disciplines of studies and they want to unite it. So consilience, a word, it's a new word. Edward Wilson meant that we need to make the different disciplines of sciences and humanities, all of them come together and create a unity of knowledge. Now, to a Hindu, and I'll bring it to temples with this, to a Hindu, to a Bharatiya, this seems very strange. Because as Hindu cosmology dictates, actually there is a very fundamental unity of knowledge. Because the very swarup of God in Hindu cosmology is knowledge itself. And it is from the one that many descends. The world has, it is a descent of consciousness and not an evolution of material towards consciousness. It is the other way around. And that's why our Shastras, our texts, see a fundamental unity of knowledge in different disciplines. That is what I encountered when I started studying architecture and sculpture. When I started studying architecture, I found that it's impossible to do so without studying sculpture. If you go to study sculpture, it's impossible to not study iconography. If you study iconography, then you will delve directly into Hindu darshan, Hindu philosophy. And so, you can feel the unity of disciplines while you try to study every single discipline. There is a fundamental unity of knowledge in Bharatiya knowledge system, in Indic knowledge system. That's how we have always seen knowledge. And that is the connection between IKS, Indian knowledge system, and temple architecture. I'll quote one great scholar, Rajneesh Mishra ji, who is the disciple of the great Dr. Kapil Kapoor ji of JNU, who established the Sanskrit department. And he utters a very significant line. He says that every Hindu discipline takes you from Bhed to Abhed. Now, what does this mean? That no matter what discipline you study, it may be architecture, it may be mathematics, it will take you from the view that the world is divided into many parts to the view that it is all one. There is a unity of being and knowledge. And that is why knowledge is at the core of temple ecosystem. So that's how I would like to start. And the first question that I would like to put to Monideepa ji, that how do you see this unity through architecture? Because as I started studying architecture, it is built in stone mostly and very concrete material. And what I was amazed that from the most concrete of all materials, stone, they have managed to convey the most abstract of philosophy, Hindu darshan. So how is that possible? How does Hindu architecture make it possible?
Thank you, Pankajji. In Hindu temple, when you talk of Hindu temples, the basic thing, the most important thing in Hindu temple is the sanctum. So I'll stick to that. Sanctum that we go, the Garbhagriha that we speak of, is a square area, and it's not just a square area. It is the main nucleus of a temple. And the very basic idea of this nucleus is that this is the place where the supreme consciousness, what we call as the Vedic Brahma, resides. He is there. So the basic square, a simple temple is not a simple temple for us. It is a place where we go to meet the divine consciousness, and that is what we actually know as moksha in Hinduism. In Hinduism, everything is moksha. Everything is related to moksha. So when we go to a temple, for the brief moment that we are there, we are experiencing that moksha. That is the basic concept of Hindu temple. And in that square shape, the Garbhagriha, the sanctum, that shape is lies that basic nucleus where the point, that is the point of initiation. So it is not just a structure where you go with four temples and a it is a place where you're going to get moksha, meeting your the divine consciousness, the divine supreme consciousness. So it is a place where you are enjoying that bliss for whatever few seconds that you are staying inside the sanctum. You are enjoying that moment of bliss, and this is a very abstract concept because you're going in, you think you're going to do rituals, you're worshipping the god, but actually what is happening is a very abstract concept. You are meeting your the divine supreme consciousness, and for that few moments it is a moment of initiation. It's almost like a birth, and then you're coming out, it's a second birth is happening. So you're going there, you're meeting, you're enjoying the moksha, and when you're coming out, like almost like a second rebirth. So whenever you go to a temple next time, remember that it is not just you're going for worship or rituals, you are going to a very sacred space where you are almost coming out of it as as your second rebirth. We believe in the concept of life and death, and when you enter a temple, it is almost like you are getting a second rebirth. Every time you go there, this happens. So, our temple is a structure with four walls and everything. The shikhara is also very important because the shikhara is where it signifies ekagrata, which is focus. You are focusing on the supreme deity inside. Hinduism is all about moksha. You are going to enjoy that moksha for the few moments you are there, and the shikhara, it's peaking up, it's towering up. It symbolizes ekagrata. It is symbolizes focusing, and you are focused totally on that god that you're going to meet. It may be Shiva, it may be Vishnu, it may be Devi. You are focused on that, and this is very clear when you check the Vastu Purusha Mandala. In the center is the Brahma, the supreme consciousness. This is a sanctum. This is where the sanctum arises. You put, when you are building a temple, the first is you are placing the Vastu Purusha Mandala on the ground. This is where the sanctum will come, and right at the center is the, which we call the deepest darkest part, is where the supreme Brahma resides. It is the Vedic Brahman, not the Puranic Brahma. It is a Vedic Brahman who resides over there. It is beyond time, space, it's beyond Kal. Surrounding it comes the cyclic order, the 12 Adityas, the Suryas come, then comes the Nakshatras and the Dikshpalas, and also basically there are 45 gods, 33, 32, 32 gods surrounding the middle one is Brahma, surrounding him is the 32 gods, total is 45 gods. So this is a cyclical order of the human beings. In between is a supreme consciousness, which is the sanctum. So in a temple, this all these arguments about Ram Mandir, the temple is not complete, is all wrong, because as long as the sanctum is complete, as long as the sanctum is complete, the deity is installed with the rituals properly done, the temple can be worshipped, you can go for worship. The rest parts can be done later. Some temples are going on for years. Birla temples are never completed. They believe that if we complete the temple, something there will be going to be something, some disaster is going to happen, so they keep on building. So all this saying, this people are saying that temple is incomplete and the inauguration shouldn't happen, is completely wrong. Sanctum is completed, the deity is installed, the murti is properly, the rituals must be very well done. The few basic rituals are very important, and the foundation ritual is very important. When you're laying the bricks, that is very important. When you're putting the womb, the Garbhadana, there's a ceremony for it, where you're laying a kalasha sort of thing, you lay over there symbolizing the Devi. That is very important. When these rituals are done, sanctum is complete, the walls are complete, the deity is installed with proper rituals, temple is open for worship, you can go and worship. So, Hindu temple is a very abstract concept. You are entering it, you're going to the sanctum, it's a very sacred space. You are going through moksha for few brief moments. You're coming out, it's like a rebirth. So, it's not like the Abrahamic shrines where you're going to meet God and you're coming out. No, it is not. It is a place where you go with a very focused mind. The shikhara represents that focusedness. You go in with a very focused mind, you meet your deity, you come back as a rebirth. You are a new person from inside. You're supposed to be a new person from inside. And this is how it works in a Hinduism. Very different from the Abrahamic concepts.
Beautiful, beautiful. So the process you mentioned the Ram temple and its completeness and incompleteness. So all of you must have heard we had darshan of Sri Ram Lala yesterday. The pictures were all over the internet, and some said that it should not have been shared. It is completely at the discretion of the sampradaya that it should not have been shared. There is a process word you must have heard, Netron Milan. So right now you have not done Netron Milan because the netras are not there. The cavity for the netra is there. When you will see on 22nd, when all the rituals will happen, they will paste silver or some other metal eyes on to the place where the eyes are. That is when Drashtipat will happen. So right now, what is happening? You are looking at the Lord. But on 22nd, the Lord will look at you, and that is a process of Netron Milan. So what happens, just to elaborate a little on that, and then I'll come to you and Radhaji. You said that the Shikhar is a symbol of focus. Now, how does this focus happen? So it is not just some arbitrary concepts that we came around. In the Garbhagriha, the Vigraha of the deity, we call it idol in English, which is an incorrect word. So we should get the habit of saying it in Sanskrit word.
I'm very rigid about this.
We should
Don't
be.
say idol.
We should be.
Because this is not an Indic concept.
And it is untranslatable. Many of you would have been familiar with Rajiv ji's new work, Sanskrit Untranslatables. It is an untranslatable. You have to call a Vigraha Vigraha. So in the Garbhagriha, there is a Vigraha. Now underneath, in underground, there is a Kalash just under the Vigraha. Inside the Kalash, there are Navagrahas. They are called to be the seed of the temple, the seed of the deity. From there, the consciousness is supposed to arise. And there is another Kalash at the top of the Shikhar outside which everyone can see, which is also in the straight line of the Kalash which is underground in the line of the Vigraha, and there is the Kalash which is directly above. That is the Kalash from which universal consciousness, supreme consciousness is supposed to descend. And when the descent of that consciousness happens, when the ascent of the individual consciousness of the deity happens, in the Vigraha, when these two energies meet, that is, and when the Lord looks at you, this is a vertical process, ascent and descent of consciousness, and when the Lord looks at you, that is the horizontal dimension when Bhakt have darshan. That is the process of darshan which happens. So it's a very sacred thing. It's a very, it is actually the unity of knowledge, the greatest of knowledge that can ever be. That is the process that happens inside the temple. So it has got everything to do with knowledge systems. Just because we are students, you are students, doesn't mean that temple is because we have been actually bred up on a culture where we are taught that why should you go to a temple? There is nothing to learn. You should go to a university to learn. Of course, universities are necessary for learning, but temple is the great center of learning. And that brings me to you and Radhaji, that here we talked about the esoteric knowledge, the abstract knowledge that is conveyed through temple and through the language of architecture. Now, in society itself, how did temples function? As centers of knowledge and learning, were they just a building in which you went to pray, or were there many other institutions attached with it? How did it work?
Namaste. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to Sri Ram College of Commerce. Okay, so I want to tell a story of this college before I come to temples. You know, I have studied Delhi very well. I have like 40 odd walking trails of Delhi written on my blog. It's called Indie Tales. But I always thought this college is named after Sri Ram, as in Prabhu Sri Ram. It's only last year that I read the biography of Lala Sri Ram, and I figured out that he was the biggest institution builder of Delhi. So he built this college, he built Sri Ram Center, he built Lady Sri Ram College, which is named after his wife, and he was also the textile icon of the city. You know, so textiles were primarily in the Western India. Or southern India a bit, or even eastern India. But North India never had a textile industry. So he single-handed complete textile industry in Delhi and around. So, and when I read it, I wanted to come and see this college, and it happened within a year. So I'm very happy to be here. So let me ask you, how many, you all are from Delhi? Which is the oldest temple in Delhi? Which is the oldest temple in Delhi you know of? Kaun-sa wala? That is one of the oldest. That's not the oldest. This is a temple that gets mentioned in Mahabharat. Maybe Google can help. It probably will take you to my blog only, where I've written a blog on ancient temples of modern Delhi. Have you been to a temple called Yogmaya Temple? Huh? Where is it? Mehroli. Okay. It's just behind Qutub Minar. Just behind the complex, you have to take a small detour, and you see this oldest temple, which is believed to be the temple that belongs to the girl who was exchanged with Sri Krishna. Okay, so, and there are many more temples which are still living, very small form. Now, why do we need temples? What was the societal relevance of temples? So, temples were the balancing factor in any society. So if you had more than what you need, you donated it to the temple. And for some reason, if you do not have enough to survive, the temple supported you. Okay. Now this support could be financial. It could be in terms of giving you medical aid. It could be in terms of providing you space, in terms of providing you support of any kind. So to me, temples were great balancing factors in the society. So today we have 20 different institutes we go to. For health insurance, we go to one institute. For studying, we go to another institute. For doing a job, we go to another institute. To get entertained, we go to another institute. To get justice or to fight our battles, we go to courts. So all this in a small, especially rural societies, all this was handled by temples. So if you go to some of the southern India temples where we found inscriptions, you find records of court battles, where if there is a battle, it is sorted in the temple, either by the people of the society or by the temple authorities. Even today in the rural India, you can find temples that run a free davakhana, a free dispensary or free health checkups. The old Indian villages specifically, and even big cities, were designed around temples. So they would first build the temple and then build the city around it. And I found it only in a couple of places still living. You find it in a lot of South Indian villages. This is a living tradition. But Dwarka as one city is where I found that no matter which route you take, it leads you to Dwarkadhish temple. So the whole city is centered around one temple, which is visible from anywhere. So you can even see that if I have to reach Dwarka from the shadow of the temple or from the flag of the temple, you can figure out how far it is. So temples had multiple roles, just like any building or any infrastructure that we built back then had. So even caves, all the caves that we find on the trade routes, they were used for about 8 months by traders who would stay there while on their trading journeys. And for 4 months, they will be used by monks for their chaturmas, when the monks do not travel or when the priests do not travel. So we never built infrastructure which can be used for 4 hours in a day and then it's lying vacant for 20 hours in a day.
Beautiful. I'll actually pick from what you said, that the city was built around the temple. And if you come to temple, the temple was built around the Vigraha, the deity. So it's not that we built a city, then we built a temple, then we placed a Vigraha inside it. We actually first installed, consecrated, did Pran Pratishtha of the Vigraha, then the temple was built around it, and then the city was built around it. Deepa Durai Swami has written an absolutely wonderful work, Agam Shastra ke upar and the temple management, in which she says how Tamil Nadu, because the temple ecosystem was the least disturbed in that state. So you see how the cities are still organized on the grids of temple. If you go to Arunachaleshwar, you go to Tiruvannamalai, it's a great place. Also the place where Sri Ramana Maharshi did a lot of tapas. And you see the Arunachaleshwar temple. If you climb the hill, the sacred hill, Arunachala, and you see, you look at the temple and you look at the grids of the cities, you will find that the grids of the cities are emanating. They are emerging from the temple. Now, why is this so? Because we sacralized everything. We made everything sacred. And that's how you make the management bottom up and not just top down. Because if the police is not there, if it's just external, the authority is just external, many of us will not adhere to the rules when the police is not around, when the authority is not around. But all of us have heard our mothers tell us in the evening, you should not touch the trees. You cannot pick tulsi leaves in evening because they are sleeping. That's how dharma works. That's how the process of sacralization work. Now, it brings me to the next question to Manidipaji, that what
Can I
we
just add
talked
a
about-
small thing?
Yes, please.
So the concept was that you and the god or the presiding deity Kshetra Devata never lost sight of each other. So the dharma was never lost in your heart and mind. It's always there in front of you in a visible form.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, from that, we talked about architecture. Now, can you tell us a little about how architecture actually communicated with sculpture? That how the studies of the two disciplines and iconography and also painting, how are all of these disciplines come together in a temple? How do they interact with each other? Because a lot of scholars have also said, commenting on Chalukyan architecture, Karnat Vesar tradition, that the architectural pieces are actually sculptural pieces which function as the piece of architecture. So even technically so, you cannot separate architecture and sculpture. I'm talking about this, it might seem a little technical, but if you go to study Greek sculpture and Greek architecture, it's very much possible to study them separately. If you're studying Greek architecture, you cannot study Greek sculpture, that's okay. But in Hindu disciplines, it's actually impossible. So how do these disciplines interact with each other, if you could tell us?
In Hindu architecture, iconography sculptures are very important. That is why when they started this started work on the Ayodhya Ram Temple, I used to write a lot on it on Twitter. That sculptures are very important because through the sculptures we speak of the various Puranic tales. So when you're going around a temple, if you go to this beautiful South Indian temples, Brihadashwara temple, for example, if you go around and you'll find that in the main niches it's a Lord Shiva temple. So you will find various aspects of Lord Shiva in the various niches, and each one is attached to a story. So when you're going around, and in the olden days, what used to happen is that when these people are going around, there used to be someone with them, a priest most likely, who would take them around pradakshina. You're going around, you're going around, and the priest is taking around. He would explain each of the stories. That's how this common people, the general masses, remain connected to Hinduism, because through the priest, through these sculptures that you're seeing in the temple, they would learn about the Puranic stories, they would learn about the various stories in the epics, Mahabharata, Ramayana. How would these people know? These village people, most of them were illiterate at that time. They could not read the Sanskrit books. So how did they know the stories? Through the sculptures. So the sculptures are an integral part of our temple architecture. Without these sculptures, I don't know, somehow our Hindu temples are not what it should be, because if the sculptures are not there. So I also write a lot on it. Even if, even in the modern era buildings, when the temples are built, even if it's a small temple, draw pictures, do paintings. Let the common people know the stories behind those paintings. That is how you remain connected to your religion, your culture. If this connection is not there, what will happen? You will have conversions. This is what has happened. I have been to the remote areas of Telangana. I have seen entire villages converted, because you know what used to happen in the earlier days? There used to be this bards, katha. We used to say the stories. They used to take the scrolls with them. They used to go to this very remote villages, and they used to tell the stories. What were the stories? Puranic stories, Ramayana, Mahabharata stories. These poor village people who had never studied Sanskrit, these books, how they used to know the stories. This people who, this bards, used to sing and dance and tell them the stories of Mahabharata, of the Puranic stories. That's how they remain connected. Once these bards stopped going, for various reasons, somehow we lost this cultural connect. This bar stopped going to these remote villages, they got cut off from Hinduism. The missionaries went, entire villages have converted. I have seen it myself. It's not something that others, I have heard it from others. This is something I've seen myself. This is how conversions have taken place, because we ourselves got connected from our religion. And sculptures on temples is a very important way of staying in connection, because once you see the sculpture, you will feel curious. What story is this? You see Shiva burning someone, you will ask, who is he burning? And then the priest will say that this is Kamdeva who got burned. Then the story will come. How Kamdeva got burned. Then there will be associated stories which will come up. There are associated figures with Shiva. There is one beautiful story of Shiva and Kali doing a dance competition, very beautifully represented in sculptures in Brihadeshwar temple in Thanjavur. People who do not know the story will ask about the story, and then they will know that once Devi Kali and Lord Shiva had a dancing competition. How many of you all know this story? I don't know. But there is a very beautiful of them competing, and Shiva could not beat Devi Kali. He was losing the game. So what he did, he put one leg up, Urdhava Tandava. He started dancing with his leg up. Kali, being a lady, a woman, she could not do it. She lost it. She said, I'm losing, I cannot lift my legs. It's not a woman, it goes against the woman's dignity, so I will not lift my legs. She lost the dance competition. And this story is represented through sculptures. So this sculptures are a very important part of our Hindu temple, because we get the stories from there. And as an iconography, I will I'll take up one part, which is the Mithuna sculptures. I think nothing is more abused than this Mithuna sculptures. You will constantly find people mocking them without understanding the meaning behind it. This Mithuna sculpture once again depicts moksha. It has nothing to do with karma or physical pleasure or anything. It denotes the bliss of union. So whenever you see moksha, whenever you see the Mithuna sculptures, you know that pleasure that it is depicting has nothing to do with karma. It has everything to do with moksha, the pleasure, the ultimate bliss you will get once you finish your cycle of lives and deaths, and you enter into a final union with your whatever god you believe in, Shiva, Devi, Vishnu, the supreme, which we call in Vedas the supreme consciousness. Once you unite, that is the ultimate. Hinduism is all about moksha. Hinduism is rest, everything is transient. You're moving from one life to another, life, death, cycle, everything is related to moksha. Ultimate aim is you will unite with your revered god, whichever god you believe in. And that when that moment will come, that feeling of pleasure, that feeling of happiness is what is expressed in those Mithuna sculptures. That bliss, moment of bliss, which people think that it is showing some distorted physical relationships, distorted sex, has nothing to do with sex. It is the ultimate union which you will feel when you meet with your god. So iconography is not an easy subject. It's a little complex to understand. There are various meaning. Each one has a different meaning. Shiva sitting with various postures. Each posture has a meaning. The dresses and ornaments tell us the story of those times. The dresses that gods are wearing was what people used to wear at the time. So you get a social picture of those days back. It's also a documentation of the social history of those times. It is a documentation of political history, because you will find war sculptures there, people fighting elephants. There are lots of, in Kakatiya temples, there are actually Gajathara. Gajathara is a series of elephants. There are also war scenes depicted, and you will find the fighting scenes. So it's a political scenario that they have been through fights. Then, of course, dresses, fashion, hair ornaments, and something very interesting I had in my blog, I had written on it, the various hair accessories. So fashionable thing, it keeps on coming back. Even now, the jewelries you find you're wearing was what the Harappan people used to wear. You will find many such designs which you wear now in the temple sculptures. So basically, it is a beautiful document. Our temples are documentation of history, political history, social history, religious history. Everything is documented there. If you go to the Kailash temple in Maharashtra, Ellora, entire Mahabharata and Ramayana is sculpted. So it is a religious documentation over there. And so when next time you go to a temple, don't just think that you're going to worship ritual. This is the old temples, especially if you go to the ancient and the medieval temples. These are where our social history is documented. We just need to read it.
On that note, Monidipa ji, uh, the greatest goal when you visit a temple, of course, to have darshan of the deity of the temple that you are going to. But there is another purpose to go to a temple. In Sanskrit, in our languages, we have the word Nagarik. And as you would understand, it has a very simple meaning that whoever lives in a nagar, whoever lives in a city, just like citizen, he is a Nagrik. But in our culture, in our civilization, that's not so. Our definition of Nagrik is extremely different. Nagrik is a person who lives in a city and actually supports art and artists, because it is believed that when you go away from villages, you go away from nature. To make up for that, you imitate and improve upon nature by art, through art, by supporting art. So a Nagrik has to support art and artists. That is the very definition of a Nagrik. You cannot call yourself in our culture a Nagrik, a citizen, just because you live there. You have to actually support art and artists. So coming from that to, we all are familiar about the ideas of equality, equity, and inclusion. These words are thrown around a lot these days. But if you see temple ecosystem, as you have studied and written about, and you just alluded to also, that there was a time, our Shastras, our texts tell us that every 5 years, if it's a peace time, the king has to donate, empty all his coffers. He has to empty all his kosha, and he has to give this dan to a temple, through a temple, to everyone who needs it. Just like you alluded, in temple what happened is that whoever had more, he gave it to the temple. The temple gave it to those who had less. And that's why temple ecosystem was a means of creating great equity in society. So my next question is, Anuradha ji, how did it integrate the local communities, individuals, and the actually the human society that lived around it?
So I am going to speak from the temple festivals perspective. Okay. So any temple festival, if you study, you have every community of that region involved. You know, so the priest may do the puja, may officiate the puja. He's not even doing the puja. The puja will be done by the yajman, whoever is the yajman, and they can be from any community. The priest kind of officiates the puja. The flowers will come from one community. The samagri may come from another community. The amenities may come from another community. I was studying a very interesting ritual, a Devi ritual that happens in Kerala. And it's a night-long ritual where they create the Devi out of colors. It's like a beautiful rangoli they create. They worship her, and in the morning they just destroy it, or they just remove it, and the ritual is complete. And every part of that ritual comes from a different community. Every community living around that temple is involved. They have some duty to do. Somebody will supply milk, somebody will supply sweets, somebody will supply prasad, somebody will supply water. So every community has a role to play. And if you've not seen temple rituals, which I assume not many people in the north of India has seen, you can look at the weddings. You know, even in our weddings, every community is involved. A nai has some role, a dhobi has some role. You know, anybody in your ecosystem has some role to play. So our festivals themselves were designed to involve everybody. I don't know when and where it became Brahmins versus the rest of them, because Brahmins had their role to play and they played that role. It was never that they dominated. They couldn't have done anything without a yajman, without a king, without somebody giving them money. So that balance is inbuilt in the system. You don't even have to look for where the balance is. That balance is inbuilt in the way the things are designed. And it may not have been designed like one fine day somebody thought of it as designed. They've evolved over a long period of civilizational history. So a lot of times when youngsters send me questions like, you know, why should we do it? You know, why should I do it? I say, if you can't think of anything else, believe that this is time and tested for thousands of years and it has worked. So if you can trust somebody saying this medicine will cure you, you can easily trust your own ancestors who've tried and tested these for centuries. Yes, it has to be renewed, innovation, creativity, everything has to come in, but start by accepting. So the question you had was equity, balance, that is already inbuilt in all our systems. The only thing we need to do, what we've done is lost everything in last couple of let's say since independence. We've kind of lost it because we stopped believing it. We started looking at ourselves from a very, very outsider gauge, from a Westerner gauge. So when you look at yourself from your own drishti, you see things very very differently. You don't look at your grandmothers and say, oh, they are, why is she doing it, why is she telling me not to enter the kitchen when I'm menstruating, why is she telling me this. Instead say, why is she telling, this knowledge has passed to her from at least 100 generations. It has been tested, it has been practiced, so there must be a reason to do it. So try to reverse your gauge and try to look at it from a very very indic angle.
While just to talk about one thing, while women were prohibited for 3 days in the kitchen, in my home, my grandmother prohibited men permanently. She thought of man as unclean. You are not clean enough to enter the kitchen. We'll give you food. Just don't enter the kitchen whenever you demand it. So it was not a world which was built on a forced equality. It was a world built on justice, and that's what we see in temple ecosystem.
I always say, especially when it comes to women, we should be the one who are giving, not asking. We should be the one empowering the world.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And not
Beautiful.
looking for empowerment every now and then.
Beautiful.
Because
And-
what we are asking for are like minuscule, mundane things.
Yeah.
What we can give is far, far bigger.
And that is what, Anuradha ji, the entire Hindu worldview is built upon. It's built upon the narrative of kartavyas. Our Shastras do not tell us the constitution is all about rights. What rights do you have? What rights does an individual have? Shastras are all about what duties do you have to play. If you are a son, what duty do you have to play towards your father, towards your mother, towards your sister and the rest of the society and also nature? We build on the concept of Pancharina, that there are 5 rin that you have to pay back to the gods, to nature, to deities in one case, to Pitra, ancestors, and to your fellow human beings. There is this concept of Pancharina in nature. For example, when my grandmother cooked food in kitchen, first of all, she would offer it to the fire. Then she would go to the gods in the temple, in the home temple, and she would offer it directly to the deities. Then to the Pitra, to the ancestors. Then she will go to the garden, give it to animals and nature. And animals, that first roti was for the cow, the last was for dog, and whatever was left, the flour was left, it was for the ants. And at last, after that, then is what we ate. I'll just end with the note at what Monidipa ji said, that Hindu dharma is all about moksha. And we are in a momentous event. A cosmic event is going to take place 2 days later. By that time, 48 hours later, Ram Lala will have arrived back in his capital. So we are amidst a very, very cosmic event that's taking place. And what is the meaning of Ram? I'm not even qualified to speak on that. But just as a bhakt, Ram is the supreme achievement of knowledge and moksha that we are talking about. Ram is the very moksha. He is knowledge. He is the very Swarup of knowledge. He is the Brahman. And that's why we need to submit ourselves in this great movement to bhakti, to knowledge, because our civilization is all about knowledge. Now I open it up to a few questions, whatever you need to ask.
On Sri Ram, I just want to add to what Pankaj ji said. Always think of yourself as the descendants of Sri Ram. Don't think he is somebody else. We are the descendants of Sri Ram.
Thank you. What a beautiful thought to end with. Any questions?
So my question is, you told about the institutions being surrounded by the temple. So we know that most of the temples are under government control, and the funds that come to the temples, they go towards the government. So if the government controls vanishes and the temples get into the hands of Hindus, will there be a revival of this institutional thing? The institutions of India will be around temples. There will be a temple ecosystem, and how will society change itself according to it?
What will happen after we get back the control entirely depends on what we do with the control. We have to prepare ourselves to build a temple economy, build structures which will make temples an active and a lively place where everybody visits. And even till that happens, it's our duty to visit temples, make them a lively place. That is what I would say. I don't know what will happen when we get it back and who gets it back. There are people who are working in that space and creating structures to ensure that we do better than what is happening currently. But we as individuals, as the members of the society, we need to start visiting the temple close to us. In fact, one common question that I get is that इतने सारे मंदिर हैं, कौन सा मंदिर जाएं? The only temple that you need to visit is the one closest to your home. Everything else you can visit as and when time permits, resources permit. But your kartavya, like he said, is to visit the temple which is closest to your home and keep it clean. Make sure it has plants, make sure it has everything that the temple should have. Make sure there is a kirtan at least once a week. That is what you need to do.
To add to it, actually, if we do want to get back to our roots, our civilization roots, we have to make our temples free. Because as our system works, the Purusharth hierarchy has dharma as the most primary category. So we all know about Purusharthas. Why is it dharma, artha, kam, moksha? Because artha and kam seem to be the similar categories. Dharma and moksha seem to be the similar categories. When I was a child, I used to think, why is it not artha, kam and then dharma, moksha? But it is not so, because Rajneesh Mishra ji again beautifully said that without the authority of dharma, kam becomes aniyantrit and arth becomes anatik. So this is what we always have to keep in mind. In temples also, politics cannot be supreme. Of course, it has a great place, but it has to be governed by dharma. And dharma is there when the temples are free, when it is run on its own system, when the society is governed by that system and not by any political system. We have to get it back.